Welcome to the Cosmic Busker. My name is Bobby Cody. This video is going to be part 3 of my continuing series, Ancient Mars Civilization, a Timeline of Discovery. In my previous video, part 2, I had started off towards the beginning mentioning that I would be talking about, at one point in that video, a paper called the Cydonian hypothesis. Cydonia is a region of Mars where various anomalous structures appear. They don't appear to be geologic in nature. They appear almost certainly to be structures from a civilization, from an intelligent life. So the Cydonia hypothesis paper is a paper. It's written by John Brandenburg. John Brandenburg is a plasma physicist. He has, my understanding is he has worked with NASA before. I actually have done a previous video that covers some work that John Brandenburg has done apart from that. That video is called Mars, I believe it's called Mars was destroyed, Martian civilization was destroyed in a nuclear catastrophe. I'll provide a link to it so you can take a look if you want. So John Brandenburg had discovered essentially that there were isotopic signatures in the Martian atmosphere that proved that Martian civilization had been destroyed in a nuclear catastrophe. They set off hydrogen bombs, destroyed themselves, or somebody destroyed them. So, but this paper, called the Cydonian hypothesis, John Brandenburg is one of the authors. The other two authors I've covered in my two previous Part 1 and Part 2 videos. That would be Gregory Molenaar and Vincent DiPietro. They are NASA imaging specialists. So, given the fact that I neglected to take a look at that paper in my previous video, I want to go right to that paper right now. We're just going to take a look at an abstract of the paper. It is a free download at this point, so I'm also going to provide a link to the paper down below. Click Show More in the description, and you can download that paper yourself and look at the full paper and analyze it yourself. So let's go to an abstract right now of that paper and see what that states. All right, the title of this paper, as you can see, is the Cydonian hypothesis. It was originally published in the Journal of Scientific Exploration, and it was copyrighted in 1991 by the Society for Scientific Exploration. As stated before, the authors of this paper are John E. Brandenburg, Vincent DiPietro, and Gregory Molenaar. An abstract or summary of the paper reads, evidence suggesting a past humanoid civilization has been found at several sites on Mars. In particular, what appear to be large carved faces with similar details have been found at 2 separate sites. Together with geochemical and geological evidence that suggests Mars was once more Earth-like in climate, the images of the objects support the Cydonian hypothesis. That Mars once lived as the Earth now lives, and that it was once the home of an indigenous humanoid intelligence. So in this paper, the Cydonian hypothesis, these 3 NASA specialists go through the abundance of evidence that Cydonia and other regions of Mars contain what are apparently the destroyed structures and signatures of an advanced intelligent civilization. One important part of this is, it makes good theory because it's falsifiable. That means that you can prove it right or wrong. It's not some, oh, well, I'm going to say this and you can't prove or disprove it. Good science means that something is falsifiable. You can prove it true or not. And how you prove this to be true or false is that you go and you take a look at these structures and determine whether these are in fact structures or whether they are geological formations, as NASA officially likes to state. Of course, part of the problem is that NASA won't do so. They have more than enough capacities and to do so, and they just refuse to do so over and over again. They drag their feet and will not look further at Cydonia. And when they do, they distort the truth and attempt to hide it. We're going to take a look at that in a moment, what they've done to attempt to portray the face as nothing more than just some mesa that just there on the Martian surface, and not what it really is, which is a structure, a face, a structure that was made to look like a face gazing up at the sky. First, I just want to point to two other works by these researchers and specialists, so that you can read for yourselves, get their books, read for yourselves, and judge for yourselves whether this is good science or not, and whether there really was a Martian civilization that got destroyed in the ancient past. Two of those books, one is by Richard Hoagland. It's called The Monuments of Mars, A City on the Edge of Forever. I'll post a little graphic up there so you can see what the book looks like. Also post a link to it down below in the description of this video, so you can purchase it if you so choose. The other book was by Vincent DiPietro and Gregory Molenaar. The book is called Unusual Martian Surface Features. Again, I'll give you a little graphic up there to look at. And I will also post a link down below in the description, so you can go to Amazon.com and purchase it if you so choose. What I'd like to take a look at now is what NASA did to attempt to dissuade the public from believing that the face on Mars was in fact a structure, and attempted to lie essentially to, I mean, there's no way around it. They lied, and they intentionally misled the public regarding the face on Mars. So I want to take a look. Ultimately, we're going to go to a photo real quick. I'm going to put the photo up here of what happened. Essentially, since I have to go through, I didn't even prepare for this appropriately, but I think it was about 2001. It was the Mars Observer. I'm doing this off the top of my head. We sent a satellite to Mars. It was going around Mars, and it was going to take photos of the Martian surface. And after much dragging their feet, but independent researchers and the public, said, NASA, you have to take this picture, you have to take this picture. They finally agreed to take a picture of the face on Mars. And I'm going to cut to the initial face on Mars photo that they shared, and while I do so, I'll give you a little more information, more specific information as well, so that this isn't done off the top of my head. Let's cut to the face on Mars photo that NASA showed the public, and then we'll talk about the real face on Mars. Here we have the photo released by NASA, which under pressure they took this photo of the face on Mars. To correct my previous statement, this was actually taken in 1998, and it was taken by the Mars Global Surveyor. As you can see, it looks very flat. It doesn't give a lot of image details. That's a result of the way that NASA chose to process this photo. They did it wrong, intentionally. In a moment, I want to cut to the NASA website and see what they say about their own taking the picture of this face on Mars, and how they analyzed it, and the filters that they used to produce the photo. First, I just want to show that up in the corner up here, and even still, despite all the image processing and intentional image processing mistakes that NASA performed on this image, you can still see it's symmetrical. There's an outer edge, and there's the inner part as well. There's a symmetry to both the outer edge and the inner edge of the face on Mars. It's highly unlikely, even with all the fake image processing NASA did, it's still highly unlikely that this would be a natural formation. But for their own reasons, which I talk about in part 1 of this series, they obfuscate the truth. What I want to do now, we're going to cut to that NASA website. We're going to take a look at what they state about the processing of this face, and we'll comment on each portion of what they state about the processing of this face photo from 1998. Let's cut to the NASA website right now, and we'll look at it. Okay, as you see at the top here, this is from the mars.jpl.nasa.gov website. The full link is in the description. It's from the Mars Global Surveyor Mars Orbiter Camera. Mars Orbiter Camera views the face on Mars. Shortly after midnight Sunday morning, April 5th, 1998, the Mars Orbiter Camera on the Mars Global Surveyor spacecraft successfully acquired a high-resolution image of the Face on Mars feature in the Cydonian region. The image is transmitted to Earth on Sunday and retrieved from the Mission Computer Database Monday morning, April 6, 1998. The image was processed at the Martian Space Science Systems facility 9:15 a.m. and the raw image immediately transferred to the Jet Propulsion Laboratory for release to the Internet. The images shown here were subsequently processed at MSSS, Martian Space Sciences System. That's an important point I just want to touch base on real quick. NASA did not process these images themselves. Instead, they had a private contractor process these images called Martian Space Science Systems. Now, why did they do this? It's called plausible deniability. They, rather than lie to the public directly at this point, they pass it off to a private contractor who then does it. It's conceivable they could actually face charges for manipulating this data in ways that are deceptive. So they pass it off to a private contractor to do instead. That was Martian Space Science Systems. In addition, you have to realize that a lot of the NASA scientists, particularly low-level ones, are good scientists. They're not here to deceive you, and that's not what I'm trying to suggest. They would, and almost certainly, if those who know about it, would be horrified that the image was processed in this way and that the public was deceived. It's a small number of people at the top, or people who are attempting to ease this information into the public domain, who did this horrific processing of the face on Mars to deceive the public. So let's go back. I want to take a look real quick at the image, the way they claim that they processed this image. Again, this is from the mars.jpl.nasa.gov website. This is right from them. This is the way they say they processed this image. You can see very clearly it's not even deceptive the way they describe it, because it's obvious that they messed the image up intentionally, and you can tell by the language that they use. Watch. Image processing has been applied to the images in order to improve the visibility of features. This processing included the following step. The image was processed to remove the sensitivity differences between adjacent picture elements. This removes the vertical streaking. The contrast and brightness of the image was adjusted, and filters were applied to enhance detail at several scales. The image was then geometrically warped to meet the computed position information for a Mercator-type map. This corrected for the left-right flip in the non-vertical viewing angle, but also introduced some vertical elongation of the image. A section of the image containing the face and a couple of nearly impact craters and hills was cut out of the full image and reproduced separately, as seen below. I want to go over each point that they made about the way that they processed that image. First, they say, the image was processed to remove sensitivity differences between adjacent picture elements. Why do you remove sensitivity differences? That's what gives you the detail. They remove sensitivity differences in order to remove detail on the image. Number two, they state, this is all from their own website, nasa.gov. They say the contrast and brightness of the image was adjusted. All right. Anybody who's played with the knobs on their TV knows if you adjust the contrast and the brightness, you can blur everything and remove all detail of the TV screen that you're viewing. Again, that's exactly what they did with this face image that's put up there real quick. They adjusted the contrast and brightness. But that's not all they did. Now, number two, they also state filters were applied to enhance detail. What filters did they apply? They applied a low-pass filter and a high-pass filter. My understanding, I'm not a graphics imaging specialist. I've played around with a little bit, but I'm by no means a expert in this field. But I think if you talk to most graphics imaging experts and image enhancing experts, if you run a low-pass filter and a high-pass filter through an image, you're going to again blur all detail, which is exactly what happened with this image. They also say the image was then geometrically warped. It's right there in their wording. They warped the image then as well. Okay. And then finally, they say a section of the image containing the face was cut out of the full image. Give them credit. While they deceive and lie, they also tell the truth about what they did in a very deceptive manner. So they essentially removed all detail and cut all the image out of it and warped it. So you're left with, boom, this image. So now let's take a look at what the face on Mars looks like without all of this obfuscation and these low-pass filters, high-pass filters. Let's cut right now to what it really looks like, the face on Mars. So here we have in front of us a 2001 photo of the face on Mars. Here you can see a lot more detail, obviously, and it looks much more like a face. It's because it was processed correctly. You can also see how symmetrical the face on Mars is. It's not a natural object. That type of symmetry makes it artificial. So as you can see, NASA finally took the photo of face on Mars with the high-resolution camera, and before releasing the photo, they put a whole bunch of filters in it to essentially wipe out any details, despite claiming that they were doing it to enhance details. That's not what it did. Any graphic specialists or image enhancing specialist will tell you what they did was take out all the specific details in the photo. Even still, as you could see, it kind of looks like a face. It was symmetrical. Large landforms like that aren't symmetrical. Regardless, one of the questions comes, why would NASA try to hide this information? I've gone over that in part 1 of this series. I'll link to that right now. It'll say Ancient Mars Civilizations, part 1. Right in the beginning, I wanted to cover why NASA would be lying about this. It has to do with the Brookings Institute report that was done. Like I said, click on the link that I had provided and you can see the video I've done about that. There's one final piece of work book by a gentleman. I got it written down here, the specifics, because it's a long title. I used to have this book way back in the day. The name of the book is The McDaniel Report on the Failure of Executive, Congressional, and Scientific Responsibility in Investigating Possible Evidence of Artificial Structures on the Surface of Mars and in Setting Mission Priorities for NASA's Mars Exploration Program. This report, the McDaniel Report, was written by Stanley V. McDaniel. He's a professor emeritus and former chairman of the Department of Philosophy at Sonoma State University. His specialty is logic. So what he did was he applied his expertise in logic, which is what science is based on, logic and rational thinking. He applied it to the decades-long debate over the Cydonian region and structures on Mars, and he compared Richard Hoagland and his team of researchers' claims and work and research, and compared it to what NASA has said, done, and researched. And he came to the unavoidable conclusion that Richard Hoagland and his team of investigators had done good, scientific, logical work, and that NASA had not. They had obfuscated, lied, and essentially failed the public interest in getting to know the truth. That's why, once again, the sub-headline of this book is On the Failure of Executive, Congressional, and Scientific Responsibility in Investigating Possible Evidence of Artificial Structures on the Surface of Mars and in Setting Mission Priorities for NASA's Mars Exploration Program. I'll provide a link in the description down below so you can take a look at this book, get it for yourself and read it. Read it numerous times, comes to the, like I said, the unavoidable conclusion that there has been good science been done by Richard Hoagland and his team, and NASA has obfuscated, lied, and not done good science or done appropriate investigations on what is, at this point, unavoidable. There was a civilization on Mars, an ancient civilization on Mars. It destroyed itself. And we have a lot to learn from that if we're going to continue on as a species. Thanks for watching. Everybody have a great day.